Hey, everybody, and welcome to Build and Breakthrough. I'm your host, Hunter Harris of Hunter Software Consulting. With me today is James Hayden. He's a fractional CRO, go-to-market strategist with over 1 billion in revenue generated. James, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Hunter, great to be here and exciting, really exciting times we're in.
Hmm.
From a business perspective, amazing opportunities that are sitting right in front of us right now. It's, I think, incredible time. So I have worked with over 140 different companies in my career, advising. I was an employee for a few of the companies, and it's been all about revenue generation and generally leading teams of people. But I work on a go to market approach, and the tools we have today. I mean, we certainly could talk about it if you'd like, in terms of AI and just the
We will.
technology is incredible, amazing, changing all the time. So a lot of the work I'm doing is adapting, taking the strategy of a company and then adapting it to what they need to do to increase their sales, especially when they're stuck. And there are a few different components to that. But technology is a big one. If I had the tools we have available today when I was beginning my career, it would have been, I would not have believed it. It's just absolutely incredible times. So yeah, 140 companies I've worked with. One of the big shifts I had was I had stumbled onto a methodology or an approach of generating revenue after 17 years of kind of intuitively knowing how to generate revenue, how to work with teams and get everybody spun up to focus on revenue. And I stumbled onto it in a big presentation to Hewlett Packard, and then I matched up with a sales training organization that had the same methodology. It would have saved me 17 years of stumbling had I discovered that early on. And so the founder of that organization, we wrote a book called Real World Selling: The Art of the Selling Conversation, published in 2013, and then republished it in 2023. The world had changed a little bit in that 10-year
Yeah.
span in terms of cold calling and picking up the phone and doing things like that. And some significant things occurred, like tech revenue, the revenue coming through direct sales in 2013 was about 70% direct sales. By
Hmm.
2023, it had shifted to 70% through channel sales or partners and about 30% through direct sales. And organizations like Microsoft have about 95% of their revenue going through channel partners. So some big changes. And so a lot of the work I've done with organizations, getting them off the ground, is on the partnership side. But of course, to be able to do that, you need to understand the benefits of what the company is bringing to the market, the product to market fit. So you really have to know a lot more than your partners. And then there's an approach to get partners, the right partners on board, to actually get them onboarded and then to monitor their progress.
Hmm. So I guess jumping in a bit about that methodology, can you give us kind of like the 10,000-foot view of what that sales methodology looks like and how it works?
Sure. The original sales methodology, and I'll jump into the story. So I was working with a small CRM, coincidentally, consulting firm. We competed against firms like PwC and Accenture and others. And Hewlett Packard was spinning off or starting a new business. And we were at the point where, I'd gone through the sales process of understanding all the decision makers, what their roles were, the name of their cats, dogs, children, birthdays, all the ritual bonding you go through. And there were people I developed a relationship with. It was a big, big opportunity for this little consulting group I was with. And we'd stayed up till 2 a.m. in the morning preparing this presentation. Thank goodness we had some detailed people who put, gold looking paper clips on the leave behinds, and everything was absolutely stunning and perfect. And so we came to the presentation, typical of the sales or revenue generation side of things. I opened the presentation, and then the close was mine, and the the middle was the CTO and the COO of our business. So it got to the point where we're about to wrap up. I had 8 slides on all the reasons that Hewlett Packard should choose our firm, and I closed my laptop, just closed it down, And I said, look, I know each one of you around the table, and this is a hero, what I'd call a hero or zero project, where this could make your career successful. So it's really important you choose the right partner. I, I've got eight slides on all the reasons you should do business with us. The real important point right now is I'm going to ask you, because this doesn't matter. I could tell you all the reasons. Why would you do business with us? And typical of the detail oriented people in on my team, the CTO and the CEO, one of them is kicking me under the table, going, "Yeah, you're off script," right? And 30 seconds, it seemed like 30 years of silence. And there was an issue that they brought up on an API, to throw out some tech terms, and they were concerned we had any experience with it. The CTO said, we did that with Toyota 3 months ago, and here's what happened. So the
Hmm.
interesting thing about the psychology is it's push, pull, right? We seek that. I think it was an ancient Greek philosopher that said that we seek what retreats from us, and we retreat what seeks us. It's push, push, pull. So I
Hmm.
pulled that naturally. It was just an instinct. And the interesting thing is that question was answered. That could have killed the entire presentation, the entire project, had they sat on that. And then the psychology behind that was they began just talking about how nimble we were and how they knew they'd get more attention from us rather than the big firms. And so it turned into a love fest. And this was on a Thursday. The next Tuesday, in my email, boom, $5 million agreement with HP. So
Love it.
what I learned, and my my approach is, because people ask me, what's the biggest sale? What's the greatest sale you've ever had? And this sounds a bit pedantic, but I tell people I've never sold anything to anybody. I have a process and a system of moving prospective clients through a process to see if they're qualified or not qualified to buy our company's services. And if they're not, they move out of the pipeline. If they are,
Hmm.
we structure agreements at each stage of the pipeline to ensure they're qualified and to ensure we're the right fit for that company. So I know that's a mouthful, but it's I think it's important. The studies I've been involved in, and have been many, everybody's trying to figure out the silver bullet on sales people and revenue generation.
Of course.
A couple of the studies actually show that introverts are a bit more successful than extroverts. And everybody thinks salespeople, it's the gift of the gab and all that. One of the most successful sales methodologies in our country is called the Sandler Sales Institute, and started by an introvert. And he would get nervous and shaky before presentations. So he just found a way to ask a lot of questions. And so why introverts are more successful? They follow a process, they ask questions, and they know when to shut up. And
Hmm.
I mean, really, that's important. I'm not saying an extrovert can't be successful. It's a
Of
minor,
course.
but those are some of the things we've discovered in the methodology. I've built additional methodologies around selecting, recruiting, onboarding, and optimizing partners when they come on board too. But a lot of it's a different emphasis and a different approach with channel or partner leaders. Most of them believe they can't drive revenue themselves as their partners. And I mean, to a certain extent, that's true, but they need to understand what the buyer signals are to train those organizations. So anyway,
Yeah,
that's the approach.
that is very interesting because one of the recurring themes that I find when I talk to really successful salespeople is there essentially there's probably more than two camps in sales, but I see a bifurcation largely where there's people that are thinking like sales is about convincing people to do something like beg, barter, threaten, blackmail, whatever you got to do to get them to sign on the dotted line, right? And, it's kind of like your classic car salesman kind of way, right? And then
It's
on the flip side, you have people that are more focused on the customer. They ask questions. They learn, to your point about qualification, can this person pay for it? Does our solution move the needle for this person at all whatsoever? Like, if they were to buy, would they get value out of that to a point where they feel like they're getting a good deal too, right? Because I mean, if you manage to get someone to sign on the dotted line, and then they're like, "Wow, this was a huge mistake," they will not want to do business with you
Ever.
forever. On the other hand, if you negotiate a sale with somebody and they're like, "Holy crap, we bought this thing for $5 million and it delivered an easy $55 million worth of value," that's what business is all about, right? Like
Absolutely.
you're clearly winning because you're selling at a profit, whatever you're selling. I'm sure the $5 million for the HP thing was a nice, huge win for y'all, but at the same time, it was a win for them as well because of the value that you and your company had. So it's a bifurcation about like a focus on self for one camp and a focus on the customer for the other. And man, I really preach the focus on the customer across the board. Uh, I guess building up on top of this, you kind of alluded to this a little bit too. One of the things that I understand that you focus on based on your website and based on our previous conversations, helping people build scalable sales processes. It sounds like a big part of that process is that qualification and continued qualification.
It is.
But is that all there is to it? If I am just a guy, right? If I wanted to start building a scalable sales process, what does that look for me as I grow, as my company grows, et cetera?
At a high level, and this sounds so easy and it's so difficult. It's
Simple but not easy, right? Of
finding the right person at the right time with the right message, right? That's
course.
ultimately what it's about. What's super important is in in building it, it's targeting the right customers. And I'm working with a company right now that's one of the companies is a building management software company. Amazing
Hmm.
solution. Nothing like it in the industry. And it's really I mean, it's a very, very small company that's ramping right now. And so I'd have to say it's a systems approach. There's a lot of different elements to it. I've got about 140 point checklist that I use with clients
Wow.
based on my own experience. I mean, the biggest thing is to find the product to market fit, right? Where does it
Hmm.
fit? And then what I've done over the last few years is what your life is now. So what's your life like before Hunter Software Consulting? And then what's your life like
Hmm.
after? So paint that picture for somebody. And then I suggest following and this is now science too, in terms of building markets, but also just in terms of the way humans, we are herd animals, the way we
Very much so.
adapt and adopt. So you're not going to get your product off the ground if you don't get to early adopters and innovators first. Then you move
Hmm.
to an early mass market, late mass market, and laggards, right? If your
Yeah,
mess
it's that whole graph of the
exactly.
population, right?
Yep. Product adoption life cycle. And the two books that backed it up and significant research has been done on it is The Tipping Point, and that was Malcolm
Hmm.
Gladwell, and then the one I latched onto, which is Jeffrey Moore's book, Crossing the Chasm. So it's,
Hmm.
how do you figure that out? So there's a fair amount of research that's done up front. And then what's really cool now is I don't know if you've used them, but building an ideal customer profile for an
Hmm.
organization. So once you build the ICP, and I'd suggest really segmenting it by and and focusing on who those typical early adopters and innovators are in whatever vertical markets you're going after. You can get to that. It takes a little bit of work and it's worth every hour
Absolutely.
you put into it. So going after them with a ICP or ideal customer profile, you can use some sales intelligence tools that are out there then to go, here's what my ideal customer looks like company wise, could be a vertical market, or it will suggest other vertical markets maybe you weren't thinking
Hmm.
of. The personas within the organization, because within most of the sales, I focus on B2B.
Hmm.
There are multiple personas. I mean, one easy one that I
Hmm.
wrote about, and it's in strategic selling, is there's always an economic buyer, user buyer, technical buyer, and a coach. And
Hmm.
all of those bases need to be covered. And they're like different animals, if you will. You could blow a dog
Can you
whistle.
run through those real quick? So I'm familiar with the economic buyer, for example.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
in that particular cluster, for example, you mentioned coach, and that's not a persona that I'm familiar with in terms of like a sales motion. So can you give us just a brief taxonomy there?
Yeah. Yeah. I'll go through this quickly. So economic buyer, that's the easy one to understand. That's the person that signs the check ultimately, right? I
Hmm.
don't use checks anymore. Maybe they sign the NFT, whatever it is. But the
There's some signature on some virtual dotted line somewhere, and
right,
that's that guy.
that person, the user buyer is the person within the organization that receives the greatest benefit from that.
Okay,
Their their
makes
team
sense.
receives that benefit. They're going to be the ones that primarily use it. Technical buyer, in a lot of cases, we work around tech a lot, would be the person that looks at the particular solution and goes, yes, it has integrity. It does exactly what it says it's going to do. And then a coach could be one of those other personas or one of the other roles. There's a personal win in it for them to adopt your solution. So I call them a chauffeur too. They chauffeur you around
Yeah.
the organization. You've identified that. I'll give you a quick example. I was working with one of the Daimler Benz subsidiaries here in the United States, and we were working on some initiatives that improve the sales or improve the market share of their company. And so after a couple of years of working with this person, he became a coach and the organization referred me on to other people. And by the way, that's the reason, as you talked about earlier, the biggest source I have of leads and moving to different companies has been referral business. So it's
Of course.
super, super important to do your best, get that 5 million to $55 million return that you mentioned. Super important to
I mean, why deal with cold calling people and cold emailing when you've got a hot to warm lead already inside of an organization, right?
and I love cold calling. I do. I do. I love it because you get to learn some new things. I mean, that's we're all wired a little bit differently in that regard, but
Of course. I mean, that's how you build your network
yeah,
some too, I imagine. But
absolutely.
why not go after the warmest leads that you've already spent time developing, right?
So there's an emotional reason. Everybody has a reason for buying, and you can
Hmm.
there are variations, but people buy for love or for fear, right? Fear is I lose my job. Love is I'm going to get a promotion. My family's going to think I'm the greatest person ever. I'm going to be revered and seen, and I'm going to get a million views on Instagram, whatever it is, right? So
Hmm.
those are the two basic reasons. This client I mentioned at Daimler Benz, it got to the point where we worked on these initiatives, and I would come to his house. His wife would be involved some of the time. I'd bring a dinner in, and we'd sit down
Hmm.
and we'd calculate out these initiatives and what we were going to do. And got to the point where he was comfortable enough with me where he would show me if we do this, this is the impact on my bonus that I'll get next year. If we do this, then it's a different bonus. That doesn't happen all the time. But if you can get to that,
Imagine not.
it's really, really important to understand that what I call the ERB or the emotional reason for buying a consumer
Hmm.
has too, or a customer has rather. So, that's part of the methodology. It's in the book and on Audible
Hmm.
and all that as well. So there's a lot of ground to cover. If I could say one thing for people in sales, have a system and always be working towards,
Absolutely.
even if it's a one person shop, I really recommend that the founders of the company journal, like have some kind of journaling or
Hmm.
your keyboarding or whatever. Like this is where I am. This is where I'm stuck. My dad was a brilliant engineer, and one of the things he did is he would let go of areas where he's stuck. He'd write it down and he'd trust his mind to work on it. And there is a certain magic to that when we get stuck on things, but also journaling and writing down what you're stuck on forces a systematic approach to your business. And what I mean by that is you grow your business. One of the biggest issues I face with companies is founder led sales, where the founder's done all the
Hmm.
experimentation. They've found a way to build a market, to hit those emotional reasons for buying. They've found the right product to market fit. They've done all of that. And then they go to hire a salesperson. The salesperson is unsuccessful because they can't tell them what they do. There's no
Hmm.
structure or process to it. So part of that scalable, repeatable process for a company, and this is where I see many companies stuck. It's when they hit that level
Hmm.
where they're about to hire the first salesperson, is give them something to operate from. If they have to go through the same trial and error as you, yeah, it's likely they're going to be gone, and you're going to be impatient with them because they're not succeeding. So that's the way to build a business. It's so important. And I think we all fight process, especially in early stage companies, and it's critical to your growth to keep track of that, because you can start to refine it, and you'll start to see some of the areas of improvement as well.
On that note, one thing that I always say is most of the places that are like low process, they're not actually low process. They just have a lot of different processes. So pretty typically, like you'll scale up your engineering team or your sales team or your marketing team, and you're like, yeah, we're low process. And it just turns out your process is individual to each individual. And some are successful and some are not. And there's no effort to, shake through that and figure out, hey, these ingredients work and these ingredients don't. Let's keep this, let's throw that out. Because to your point, exactly, like especially earlier stage companies, it feels bad to have some of that systemization and over systemization, emphasis on over systemization is a problem that occurs when you're systemizing for the sake of systemization. That is a legitimate threat in terms of velocity for all of these functions. But if you have zero process, you're just going to go slow because you don't know what you're doing. I did want to go back to one thing that you were talking about earlier in terms of scalable sales processes. You mentioned part of kind of the basis here is product market fit. How should founders be thinking about using sales to strive towards product market fit? Because one thing that I've noticed in a lot of cases is, first of all, product market fit is an important milestone to reach on your journey, but product market fit is an ever evolving, ever changing target. It's not a static thing. So I see a lot of companies that hit product market fit and then slip back out of it due to complacency. The, Given that sales is interacting with customers all the time, they have unique insight into that. So how can founders really tap into that, both in terms of their sales teams and their individual sales efforts?
Hunter, you pretty much answered the question. Yeah, it's super. I mean, this is a big failing I see in companies, is
Yeah,
like,
it's scary.
yeah, look how fast things are changing now. Like, it takes a lot of discipline to keep up on the latest advancements, and pick your area. Like, mine is revenue generation and the impact of AI on that, and what AI can do, and where's the handoff between a human and or a AI and a human, right? So it's our products are changing so rapidly, and the best listening post, or the most valid listening post to the market, is going to be your salespeople. I mean, it could be customer support, depending if the organization's
I
large.
mean,
Yeah,
they should be in the mix for sure.
but it's the integration of different functional areas is so important. I run into a lot of organizations too that they see themselves three different ways. They have three businesses, and none are connected. So and I'll come back to that in a second, but product to sales is so important. And marketing should be involved
Incredibly important.
in terms of the messaging, and just in terms of the way things are changing in the marketplace. It's never been more important than it is today. One of the organizations I worked with on cleaning up their sales reporting, because salespeople are notorious for not keeping up the CRMs and that. And I mean, that's a critical.
Classic, right?
It really is. That's a critical piece of that intelligence we need to run
Hmm.
companies. So if
If you don't have data, you can't act on it, right?
100%. And so operations will be over here, and it's like, hold it. We're a month out before delivery. I don't have anybody to cover this new initiative. Or finance is like, well, I've got my budget, but the expected value of my pipeline says this. How do I know that that's valid? So, there's a lot of tricks, not tricks. There's a lot of objective criteria that needs to be built, and all those different parts of the organization need to connect. You'll have a more successful organization. Sometimes it's a force fit within organizations where we had, it's a terrible sounding name. One of the organizations I worked with, we brought several groups together, and one of the people on the team called it SMOPS, which is sales, marketing, operations. And we would meet every week because it's significant that we're that connected. And we didn't have finance,
Absolutely.
different part of the business. We met with them on different occasions, but yeah, it's as an organization grows, it's really, really important for everybody to be connected. Otherwise, you're going to have delivery issues. You'll have financial issues across the board.
I've seen something similar actually, taking it even further, sales, marketing, operations, product, and engineering all together,
Mm.
especially when for example, with some of the companies I've worked with in the past, trying to land really big enterprise deals, the value of getting that whole software value stream in a given room so that from end to end, like marketing and sales have some idea of what the engineers are building. Engineers have some idea of sales and marketing's needs to actually close the deal. It's incredibly important and incredibly impactful when you can get all that lined up together and in the same room. That's, in my opinion, that's really how you get like the real velocity out of organizations. Speed is one thing, but when you can get everybody marching together rapidly, it's incredible.
Well, and having a common vision and focal point
Exactly.
is incredible. One of the organizations, a larger organization, and I'll put it out there because we all know it, is NVIDIA. And Jensen Huang he's done an incredible job of getting everybody behind the vision of that company. I'm based in
Hmm.
Seattle, so I worked at Microsoft in the past. So one of the things I saw at Microsoft, and it was an incredible place to be, was and Bill Gates and John Shirley, who was the first president of Microsoft, painted this vision that we're changing the way the world communicates, and we're all part of that. And and then what it boiled down to, what their tagline was we're about a PC on every desktop. Now you're part of that. There's no question with what you do and what you're involved in doing. And that's why I could leave at 7 o'clock at night and I'd find somebody, putting a cot under their desk. They were going to sleep for a couple hours and get back at it. And it created that incredible vision
Hmm.
that people were so motivated.
In a literal sense, living the dream, right?
Yeah.
Well, James, this has been fantastic. Thank you very much for coming on. Do you want to plug your pluggables?
My website is James B as in boy, Hayden, HAYDEN.com. All of my information's on there. Happy to have conversations with organizations that are stuck on revenue generation. I do a free 30-minute diagnostic regularly, and there's no obligation. We can all learn from each other, but there may be some insights I have from 40 years experience and working a lot in AI now that would benefit an organization. I've got a book. It's on Audible. I post pretty regularly, and so I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn. I'm trying TikTok. We'll see how that goes, and on Threads. So you can keep an eye out there. Feel free to link in.
Yeah, shoot me a link to, I have your LinkedIn, but shoot me a link to your Instagram, TikTok, etc. And I'll make sure there's links to all this stuff in the show notes. But again, thank you very much for coming. This has been fantastic. I love talking about sales. I love talking about the customer. I love talking about helping businesses move faster. And this has been exactly that. And for everyone viewing, thank you very much for joining us. I hope that you've enjoyed this as much as I have. This has been fantastic and inspirational to me. And I hope all of you out there have a fantastic day. Peace.
Honored to be here.